Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 21st, coming up on noon here. Today we're going to talk about the ridge building over the area, as you can see here. We're also going to talk about increasing confidence for return to active weather later January into early February. Some of the models showing some cold air getting towards the region again. All kinds of different solutions possible, but return to active weather looks likely at the end of the month on into early February. We'll look at some other weather around the country too. Southern California, Great Lakes, and some Arctic air into the east. First of all, taking a look at our visible satellite imagery here, you can see a lot of fog in the valleys here, and there'll be some breakout today, and some coastal areas are going to be pretty nice the next few days as well. And this is going to be a pattern that's going to repeat for the next several days. We don't have any precipitation probably coming until at least January 29th or 30th. So a full week of dry weather for the Pacific Northwest gives us the time to dry out here. Check out the tropical disturbance that developed over the Pacific Ocean here. Pretty unusual for this time of year, but the relatively cool sea surface temperatures and the wind shear are not going to allow this to develop into a system. It did get the attention of the Hurricane Center though, but it's just kind of a nice looking feature on visible satellite. Some stronger winds on the north side, but no deep convection associated. Very unusual for this time of year. And there you can see it's at a 0% chance of cyclone formation. Now it was 30% last night, 10% this morning, and now it's completely dead in the water. So taking a look at the current weather here, let's look at what we're dealing with coming up this next week. Look at the storm track. You know, it's north of us, it's out over the Pacific Ocean, but it's just no precip for Western Washington, Oregon, or British Columbia. Southern portions anyway for the next several days. There's January 30th, and finally a system gets in here, brings some rainfall. And you'll notice how pressure gradients build north. That's some Arctic air getting into our region later in the period here on the European run. And that's our sign of our change into the active weather pattern in the extended. If we look here, you can see this is a surface temperature anomaly here, how just abnormally cold the weather is out on the East Coast there, all the way out to the Gulf states. If we put this into motion here, you can see a reinforcing shot of Arctic air come through the Great Lakes about the 23rd and 24th, and yet another one onto the 25th and 26th. Look at that over the Great Lakes, really cold. Go into the future a little bit further here, and you'll notice that cold air start to build to our north there. Look at British Columbia starting to cool down at this point. And this is our pattern change coming up, which we'll look at more detail in a bit. And we can see here we've got that weather system moving through the Great Lakes and some snow there for the Carolinas up towards Virginia. Put that into motion. You can see those reinforcing shots of snow for the Great Lakes. Look at all this lake effect snow going on up there. Probably going to be some nice totals here in the next week or so. And then we go into it. Look at that nor'easter coming up the East Coast there on January 30th morning. Another impressive storm. We'll see how that plays out. And then you can see our Arctic high pushing down into central BC, giving us a chance at some cooler weather coming here for the Pacific Northwest. We'll look at that a lot more detail on it a little bit here. So taking a look at the current pressure map, you see the big ridge of high pressure over the Pacific Northwest here, and you'll notice how that builds also into the Great Basin. That 1046 high centered over Idaho. This is going to spawn some offshore winds over California, damaging winds at times, especially through Southern California. Strong Santa Ana wind event coming up here. Let's take a look at how those winds develop through Friday. You can see them spreading through Nevada, through the canyons of Southern California. Some isolated gusts up to 80 miles per hour possible. Very strong Santa Ana wind event coming for Southern California. You can see those offshore winds extend all the way through the Sierras, all the way out towards the Bay Area too. And you can see some strong offshore winds going off the coast of Oregon further north. These winds keep going until Sunday morning here, still going through the valleys. So yeah, heads up if you're going down to Southern California or have any family down there. Looking at the wind advisories from further out, you can see the high wind warnings in effect for much of the Southern California area and the Sierras there. Wind advisories for North Dakota. There's going to be some blowing snow and some light snow falling. Freeze warning all the way down to the Gulf Coast, and some winter storm warnings and winter advisories for the Carolinas all the way up towards Virginia there. If we look at North Dakota, blowing snow impacts, possible blizzard conditions at times, probably with winds gusting 45 miles per hour with snow falling. Visibility down to a half a mile, so near blizzard conditions. As we look into the wind gust forecast, this is Sacramento. You can see these high winds through the Sierras here, gusts to 60 miles per hour. Santa Rosa, 60 miles per hour. San Fran even getting some strong winds up to 35 miles per hour. You can see the impact's supposed to be major. Localized power outages, down trees, impacts to outdoor mountain recreation. And today through Saturday, strongest this afternoon and evening. And you can see all the high wind warnings up and wind advisories also. Southern California, gusts 50 to 70, isolated 80. So very powerful event going through here. Down trees, down power lines. Look at all the high wind warnings going on, and the wind advisories. Wind advisories for Las Vegas also, and some of the desert areas, not quite as strong as Southern California or up towards the Bay Area. And here we are back to the Pacific Northwest. Check this out. No watches or warnings or advisories at this time. This is a very rare sight. We usually have some kind of small craft advisory going on or some kind of fog advisory, but we have nothing right now. We're probably going to have some dense fog advisories on through the week as we go through the morning fog, afternoon sun pattern for the next 7 days or so. If you can get above the inversion on the terrain here in the mountains, you can get some great views and some pretty warm afternoons. An inversion is when colder air is trapped at the surface and you've got warmer air above it. And that cold air tends to happen in the valleys. And then, so if you can get above that inversion into the terrain, you can get some really nice weather. Oregon, same thing down here. You're probably going to have some dense fog through the next several days, but not much else to talk about there. Pendleton, same thing, valley fog, better conditions up on the higher terrain. Same thing for Spokane based on where you are, and Missoula, Montana, same thing as well. So here we're going to look at the European. This shows visibility. You can see some of the fog around the Willamette Valley and Puget Sound, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. And that kind of burns off into this afternoon for most areas. And as we go into Saturday morning, you see the redevelopment of some of that fog, Willamette Valley, Puget Sound, eastern Washington. And then we burn out a little bit again Saturday afternoon and repeat that Sunday, repeat that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday until we can get the next Pacific system in here, which looks like probably on the 29th or 30th. And some pretty dense fog probably going to come in by Sunday or Monday morning too for the Puget Sound. These light winds are going to have a hard time clearing out this inversion. So let's bring this out to the extent and see what we're looking at here. This is the GFS. You can see reinforcing shots of Arctic air for the eastern portions of the country, especially the Great Lakes there. And if we put that into motion out here on the 29th and 30th, you see some cold air start to take up residence here over British Columbia. And some of these trajectories are nice for lowland snow events. That's just one of the many solutions that could happen. It could end up being windstorms or multiple systems moving through and the cold air stays just north, but we'll see how that plays out. But you can see some pretty abnormally cold air. Looks like it's showing up in the models there. Confidence is increasing in the solution. We just don't know how that's going to impact the weather for western portions of Washington, Oregon yet, or eastern portions for that matter. And you can see that cold air kind of hangs out for a bit there on into early February. And here is the European here too. You can see this Arctic high at the very end of the run here, kind of settling down, that gradient setting up over southern British Columbia. So we'll see how these systems interact with this Arctic air, what the trajectories are like coming off the coastlines in the upcoming days. Here's a look at the Pacific North American Oscillation. And like I said before, if you're in negative territory, that gives ridging out over the Pacific Ocean, which allows for northerly flow, and it allows for colder air, the possibility of colder air getting into our region, or at least a more active weather pattern. So that's the GFS ensemble. There's a European ensemble for late January into early February. The European weeklies have a very chilly pattern all the way through into March. Canadian agrees, going into negative territory into early February. And here's the European operational run showing that pattern change around the 30th. Here's the GFS ensembles for minimum temperatures. You can see some of these solutions have some Arctic air getting into the region there. So that's what we're starting to pay attention to now. The signal is, it's picking up here a bit. And you can see some of these solutions in the last couple of days have been pretty outlandish. Some temperatures getting way down even into the teens and even lower than that. That's kind of just how the GFS usually plays these events. And finally here, just taking a look at some of these extended runs here. You can see these are very cold solutions, some of these Some very cold air moving down out of the Arctic on us. Not all of them, but a few of them. And it's just kind of interesting to look at. And no, some of them have ridges building. So there's a lot of solutions what could happen here. Some of them have windstorms moving through the area and the cold air staying further north. But so that's what's going on for today. I'm thinking about doing a live stream later on today, maybe tonight, just so I can, talk about the new merchandise in the shop and just kind of get some feedback from you guys, what you guys want to talk about coming up. And we'll look at some more. I'm watching every run as they come in and trying to pick up on this trend to the active weather pattern later January into February. So we'll talk about that tonight too. And we'll go into much more detail on that tomorrow morning in tomorrow's video. So I will talk to you guys later.